Hi guys, I'm Timo of Leap Magazine and you're watching Season Pass, a show that takes you behind the curtains of the eSport industry. Today's panelists are Sovann, Skim, Kim, the former head of Dota at GoSuGamers, Lawrence Malystryx Phillips, the editor-in-chief at JoinDOTA, and Johan Järvinen, former reporter for OnGamers. Welcome, gentlemen. This time round, we are going to talk about expectations of the press. Last episode, we talked about the obligations pretty much of gatekeeping of the industry, but obviously this is a two-way road, so to speak, so the press do come equipped with their own set of responsibilities, and we're not always very good at living up to them, so to speak. Off the top of my head, if I'm just to kick it off, obviously what the press should be doing is kind of like what we talked about last episode, exposing the truth and doing these things, doing the digging. But some would also argue that their job is to inform the public, and not necessarily only on important matters. There's a reason tabloids everywhere thrive. So looking at the expectations we have for the press and the obligations of the press, I'm going to start you out with a bit of a toxic topic. Clickbaiting. The pros and cons and possible necessity of clickbaiting in our current industry. Just to kick you off.
I think clickbaiting is a quote-unquote legit strategy for a lot of websites that still try to thrive in this industry. You see a lot of very smaller, very up-and-coming websites that still try to clickbait or have like some really supposedly very interesting pictures, videos, whatever. I'm not really a big fan of it, and I think in esports especially, there's actually a lot more freedom in terms of clickbaiting, because I feel like a lot of people have a lot more power than that. I mean, sure, say for example Lawrence, who's working for JoinDOTA, but he has the editor-in-chief, he has a lot more say than, say, a normal editor-in-chief, just because he doesn't have to deal with as much politics. That's at least my perception of it. So, yeah. So it's very much in his hands whether or not JoinDOTA produces clickbait articles or not. So I think in that case, it's much better in esports, but obviously there's still a lot of clickbait. Do I like it? Not really, but it's sadly part of it. As you said, people do want that kind of stuff, unfortunately. It wouldn't work if it wasn't the case.
I think people do like to read tabloids. I mean, it's obvious, in Britain you've got The Sun, and I think for clickbaiting, for me, as long as it's not a lie, I think it's fine. I mean, you should be reasonable in how many clickbaiting articles you have. I mean, like you said, small websites like, I don't know, I'm going to say 2p.
Can we just say BuzzFeed?
But okay, BuzzFeed. But that's, I think, it is a legitimate way to get clicks, and you've also got to think about the long term. Is perhaps you're going to get clicks now, but what do players think in the future? So there's a website called GoSuGamers, which Skim used to work for, which is kind of infamous for this kind of clickbaiting article, which I think is also related to the fact not many of their writers are native speakers, so they don't realize the implications of the title. But I think it's fine. I think it's reasonable. If it's not a lie and it's not all the time, it gets clicks, it gets views, makes your boss happy. The boss wants views, you give him views, you've satisfied the criteria. So I think it's okay, within everything in moderation, I guess.
For me at least, I don't think clickbaiting serves the public, and for me, serving the public and informing the public was always, that's the only reason I started writing about esports. But it's also, I think you can't talk about clickbaiting without talking about the role Reddit has taken in our industry. Because when I came in, I didn't actually care about Reddit. I wrote articles, I put them up. I was working at JoinDOTA at the time. I just put them up there, and I tried to inform people. And I only cared about, are they being informed? Because I trusted that, I saw it in the viewership numbers. They would visit our website, they'd read the stuff, they'd find it was useful, so they keep on reading. But now, I think even big sites like JoinDOTA, even though they have a lot of traction, I think everyone has to be aware that if you get on top of Reddit, that's going to get you more views than you normally would. And
well, that's to kind of spot in. I mean, the esports scene is not that detached from regular gaming. Most of the people who come into esports have history in gaming press, one way or the other, because the industry is what it is. And if we look at the aspects of, say, heavily researched articles, Polygon is a very interesting scenario in which they used to have these feature articles, really long feature articles, that they had to cut because nobody read them. And when they cut them, those feature articles, these kind of idealist articles about what gaming press should be, the amount of lashback that came from the public when they cut the articles was tremendous. Oh, everybody wanted this highly intellectual academic content. To which Polygon also had to say, oh, this is wonderful. But more people have reacted to and read the fact that we're cancelling the articles than read the articles. So idealism is nice, and we all like the idea that we want to do proper content, but when push comes to shove, do we in reality kind of just peddle the fix? Is that what we're doing?
I think it is quite elitist. I mean, I've seen Sun Tzu's old articles on our website, and they're huge. I mean, like, I honestly wouldn't read something so long because I don't have that attention span. And I'm sure that other people like me, they don't have the attention span. So I've got an editor called Gorgon, and he writes all these statistics articles, and I'm really not interested in stats, but some people like it. But generally, with such a big audience in Dota, you want to reach as many people as possible. Some people like drama, some people like stats, but the in-depth article is going to target a specific type of audience. And if that's the kind of people you want to reach, it's fine. But generally, you want lots of different kinds of people. So I think, again, it's the same thing, everything in moderation. You don't want one website full of ridiculously long articles because, most people in Dota are not native speakers. They're like, oh, this is like school, this is heavy. Or what do these words mean? So I think that's a big thing, making it accessible to non-native speakers.
When talking about this topic, though, I feel like we should also talk about what obligations you have as a writer or as a journalist, because obviously you're still working for a website or an organization that wants to make money. So I've made the experience that sometimes it's just easier to have this really quick article that may not have as much quality, that may even just be fluff or drama, that may even contain a clickbait, than just do a really well-researched article. I too have read Sun Tzu's articles, and I do think they're really great. But at the same time, they also need a lot of work. It takes hours to not only research, but also get into the whole topic, but also just writing it and checking it and possibly even rewriting it depending on what your colleagues say. Whereas if you just put out oh my God, player A just tweeted something, player B responded, you package that into an article that's maybe 2 paragraphs long, it's probably even going to get you more views. So I've made the experience that just as a journalist you have this twist inside of you. Do you go the high route? Do you just take, okay, I'm only going to read good articles, or do you also take the low route and just say, well, we need to meet a certain amount of news this weekend, so just take a tweet and package it into an article.
Everybody's got to eat.
Yeah. It's frustrating, to be honest. I mean, some articles, I'll write a news and I try to word it carefully and get all the sources, and then someone else just have this nonsense, it's just a tweet, 4 lines, and everyone's mass comments, and it doesn't really make sense because I've taken more effort, but that's just the way it is. A writer, you should write what you're comfortable with. So I mean, in the end, it's internally, do you feel okay to write this kind of sleaze? I'm not gonna name names, but if you did write sleaze, are you okay with that? And that's fine, I think. But yeah, it does get frustrating as a writer when you're taking a lot of time. I guess Sun Tzu takes a long time with his articles, and he's not getting as many views as someone who's just writing nonsense like a tweet. But that's just the way it works. Really, different people like different stuff.
Well, I mean, moving into that, you all speak of the integrity aspect. You mentioned last time, the bit with digging for the truth and exposing things like that. What are your professional opinions on the pros and cons of leaking content? Because on one hand, you have businesses, you have teams, you have organizations that have no interest in information coming out until they've completely PR proved it. And on the other hand, if you as a journalist sit on information that you have, what is your obligation to bring it? And where does it, when does the obligation and respect for one kind of trump the other?
That's actually something that I'm still trying to find out, because I've been in this situation before, actually multiple times, where I've gotten exclusive content that I could have published weeks in advance. But depending on the organization that it concerns, I actually always feel really twisted as, well, am I going to take this risk and actually going to be on their blacklist? Because obviously there's some big organizations with bigger pull in esports, and if you do get on their bad side of things, odds are you're going to have a difficult life. And personally, I don't think I've built up a repertoire, a resume just yet where I can just safely say, I'm just gonna leak this. So I think, for me personally, it's still very difficult. I do think that we have a sort of obligation to inform the public. If I do get information, I think I should publish it. But at the same time, I think we should also talk to those organizations first. And I don't know if I'm gonna go back to Richard Lewis again. He had that scenario again where he was talking to Riot about this whole thing. At least give him a chance to say, okay, hey, I do have this information. I'm gonna publish it, just so you know.
He's always been rogue. I mean, Richard Lewis, I've been in esports like over a decade, and when he started, he had this blog called Gonzaria, okay, and it was like a 4,000, 6,000 word article where he just ranted, and that's just his like style. I mean, now people got used to it. But at the time, it's like, oh, it's Richard Lewis, he's a maniac. But now, you know, he just kept flying away at the thing he did. So I think maybe after time, people will change. But yeah, he was a rogue at the beginning. Like, he was crazy.
But I mean, also these people who leak these stories. A lot of it is you have to sort of pay your dues. You end up on a lot of blacklists, and then eventually people just figure out that blacklisting you isn't going to work. So, but in the meantime, you have to have people who are willing to support you through that period. And I think that's a rare opportunity to have someone at your back, and that's specifically what Richard had with Heaven Media. That's like the only reason he was able to keep on doing a lot of that stuff was they were willing to say like, no, we don't care what anyone else says. We know you do good work.
But he brought the typical journalist style to esports. That's why Richard Lewis is so unique, is he's what we would class a journalist. I remember a long time ago I wrote an article, I said, we don't have any journalists in esports. He responded. When I mean journalist, I mean someone who digs deep. We just get a tweet and we use it. We don't like phone people.
With that, I am going to wrap it up because those are nice words to stop with. For more on Season Pass, stay tuned to leakmac.com. Thank you, gentlemen.